the hand, the hand raising. It's turning on your video is raising your hand. Okay.
Oh, so that's your way of you not wanting to see all of our beautiful faces? All righty. That better?
Okay. Oh, very nice. The fancy version.
You ready?
Yeah, I just see where the chat.
He didn't, really didn't like announce it to anybody. So I would say he wasn't eager, you know what I mean? Like it was, I didn't even know it was in there. I don't know how long it's been there.
Someone has their audio on.
Want to make that investment.
I don't see who that is. Okay, we're good to go.
Okay. Welcome to the September 2020 Community-Based Organizations Working Group meeting. Before we begin the meeting, I would like to ask Jane Clough, who is serving as our clerk today, to confirm if we have a quorum. Jane, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do have a quorum.
Wonderful. I would also like to review the process for both the working group members as well as the members of the public who wish to speak under public comment. For working group members, you would like to speak, please click on raise hand, the raise hand icon in the Zoom control panel. You have control of your video and mute, so please turn on your camera when you'd like to speak and I will call on you. Also, please remember to keep your device on mute. Now, do we have any questions before we continue? Wonderful. Jane, can you provide a quick reminder on how the public comments will work today?
Yes. In a second. Yes. As noted on the cover page of today's meeting agenda, in addition to emailed comments, the public also may provide live comments during today's meeting. To provide a live verbal comment during the meeting, please join the Zoom meeting either by computer or phone. At the time of the public comments, members of the public are advised to raise their hand if you wish to provide comments. The raise hand feature can be found on the Zoom toolbar for those who are joining via computer, or by entering *9 for those joining via telephone only. The chair will call on members of the public by name of those joining via computer and by the last 3 digits of your telephone number for those joining via telephone. All comments received prior to the close of the meeting will be made part of the meeting record. The instructions for providing live comments also are on the bottom of your cover page of today's meeting agenda, which can be accessed from the homepage of SANDAG's website, www.sandag.org. Thank you, Chair.
Wonderful. And for our technical staff, and also I'm sorry for the clerk, can you just confirm that the public is able to log into the working group meeting? I'm getting notification that the Zoom link for the CBO meeting on the agenda requires a password and that the audio feed for SANDAG is also down. So it's my understanding that the public can't see or hear anything. If you guys can just verify.
Arthur, are you there?
This is a working group meeting, so there is no public audio feed going out off of our website.
It's the public feed, you mean the YouTube?
I'm being informed by the, go ahead.
There's no YouTube going out on this. There's no website link going out on this. It's just a general link. As you can see, we have 20 attendees in this meeting. They have used the correct link and it's working. If people are trying to access via the SANDAG website, it's not going to be applicable to this meeting.
Yeah, as a working group, it's just the Zoom.
I don't know what, Jane, just because I'm running the meeting right now, I don't know what link was posted on the SANDAG website.
It's on the agenda. It's on the
Correct.
agenda.
So I can't get there without taking down all of your slides here. So Kendall, can you double check that for me?
I double checked. This is Linda. I double checked the link on the website and it's accurate
Okay.
on
So
the
it's good.
agenda page.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for confirming that. I appreciate it. It's very important for us to have the public be able to access this meeting. So I really appreciate you guys, your patience here today. I would like to take the opportunity for our community-based organization members to introduce themselves and the area of the region served so that the public joining us today are aware of who everybody is. And so if we want to get started,
Yeah, also, Craig Jones. I'm just
Yes,
gonna go
hi. Absolutely. Craig Jones, I'm with the Alliance for Regional Solutions. We're a broad spectrum collaborative serving North San Diego County. We have membership of some 70 nonprofit organizations and 8 cities in North County as well as the county. It's generally the area north of Highway 56. Thank you.
And Kim Heimley.
Good morning, I'm Kim Heinley. I'm with Bayside Community Center. We're located in Linda Vista. Thank you very much.
And Lisa Cuestas.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Cuestas with Casa Familiar, representing San Isidro, but South Bay as well.
And Randy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Randy Torres Van Vleck. I'm a senior program manager in transportation and planning at the City Heights Community Development Corporation. We're a nonprofit that's been based in the community of City Heights since 1981.
And Carol Lewis.
Good morning, I'm Carol Lewis. I'm with the El Cajon Collaborative representing El Cajon East County, and we have a community-based organization with over almost 80 agencies.
And Lillian Serrano.
Hi, Lilian Serrano with the National Latino Research Center at Cal State San Marcos. We work primarily in North County, more specifically along the 78 and 76 corridors.
And Elizabeth Liu. Elizabeth? She was here.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Liu. I am the Executive Director for NAL Sisters Development Initiative study, serving the greater San Diego County. Thank you.
And I see Claire Grobner.
Morning, my name is Claire Grebner. I'm representing Olivewood Gardens and Learning Center. We're located in National City, so really focused on supporting that community as well as Greater South Bay.
Okay. And let's see. Oh, Faye Seligman.
Hello, good morning. This is Faye Seligman with Operation Samahan Health Center. We're a federally qualified health center that has 6 sites and 14,000 unique patients here in San Diego. We're representing the National City region.
Okay. And Urban Collaborative, Barry.
Collaborative project, and we're focusing on Southeast San Diego. Good to be here.
And I think Erica Leary from Vista Community Clinic is having trouble getting into the meeting. Oh, Erica, there you are. Erica? Okay, she's having trouble connecting. I can see her, but she's having trouble connecting.
Jane, she doesn't have a camera or a microphone, so she's trying to log in with her phone as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introductions. And now, do we have any comments from the public? Clerk?
No, we don't have any comments from the public.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We're now going to proceed to moving the meeting minutes. And these meeting minutes are from our July 26, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of July 26th.
Is that Carol Lewis?
Yes, it is.
Okay, wonderful. Carol, thank you so much. Can I have a second?
I second Claire Grebner, Olivewood Gardens.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I have a motion by Carol and a second by Claire. And I'll call on the clerk for the roll call vote, please. Clerk?
All right. So Craig Jones,
Yes, approve.
Kim Heinley,
Approve.
Lisa Cuestas,
Approve.
Randy Torres Van Vleck,
I approve.
Carol Lewis,
I approve.
Lillian Serrano,
Approve.
Elizabeth Liu,
I approve.
Claire Grosvenor,
Approve.
Faye Seligman,
Approve.
Barry Pollard,
Yay, I approve.
and Erica Leary. Was she able to get on?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just got permission to speak, so yes, I approve.
Yes. Okay. And if, if she could be moved to panelist.
Jane, it's Kendall here, production. She is a panelist. She signed in from her phone as well because of connection issues. So her phone number is in the attendee list, but she's unmuted so she can speak with you guys. She's just watching from computer.
Great, super. And I didn't see Brenda Lee Rodriguez in the attendees. Okay, super. Thank you.
Can you?
So that it's an unanimous.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so item 1 passes unanimously with those members present. We're going to move on to the next item, which is public comment, communication, member comment. This is where members of the public shall have the opportunity to address the working group on any issues within the jurisdiction of SANDAG that is not on this agenda. Do we have any public comments? Clerk?
We do not have any public comments. We have one public comment actually from staff member of SANDAG, Susan Friedman, who's one of our regional planners who has a comment. So let me see here. She should be on. You can unmute.
Okay, I think you can hear me now.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Susan Friedman, and I lead our clean transportation efforts at SANDAG. And I wanted to announce an email I sent out yesterday, but a new regional electric vehicle charging rebate program, and it's called CAL-E-VIP, San Diego County Incentive Project. And it's going to open up for people to apply with applications on October 27th of this year. And I'm talking to you now because the website just went live last week on Thursday, and the California Energy Commission, who we partnered with, along with the County Air Pollution Control District, we held a webinar about the program requirements last Thursday. And so a little bit about the incentive program. It's an opportunity to make electric vehicle charging installations easier and more affordable for businesses, commercial properties, multifamily residences, and local government facilities throughout the county. And properties serving disadvantaged and low-income communities are eligible for higher incentives. And this is something we brought before the CBO working group last summer and got your input while the project was being designed. So now as I said, the San Diego County Incentive Project will be launched, and it's by our local nonprofit, the Center for Sustainable Energy, again, October 27th. And we do plan to have a pre-launch webinar the first week of October that we'll also be pushing out information on. But the rebates can be up to $80,000 for a fast charger and up to $6,000 per level 2 charger. And to get more information about this, the webinar presentation was just posted from last week, and it walks through all the different requirements and incentives and how you can apply. And the website link also went out via email, but an easy way to access it is if you went to www.calevip.org for Cali VIP. You can also click on San Diego County to get more information. I've also provided a website, email contact as well. The Cali VIP has set up a San Diego County specific email address now, which is SDC for San Diego County Cali VIP at energycenter.org. And then you can also reach out to me or through Jane as the clerk and staff person for the CBO working group. But we're very excited to bring this forward. And we'll be doing a lot more outreach and providing some additional technical assistance as we lead up to the program opening. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Susan. So if CBO members would like to offer any comments or questions, please either turn on your camera or raise your hand. I'll give you guys a few seconds here. Clerk, do we have any comments from the public?
I do not see any comments from the public.
Okay, and I don't see any hands raised or cameras on, so we're gonna move on to the next item, which is the chair's report. So earlier this month, the Board and Policy Advisory Committee heard the vision for the 2021 regional plan. This is the beginning of a dialogue on how the vision will become a plan, and I'm very excited to see how this unfolds. Today, we're gonna have a brief recap, but I highly encourage you to dig into the data viewer and explore how the network is gonna support your communities in particular. I understand that there will be a larger meeting with the working group in October to look at different aspects of the plan and policies and programs that support it. We are going to be hearing the 2021 regional plan vision in 5 big moves. This is the overview from Tueri Faiola, and she is a member of the 5 big moves team. And so if you would like to take it away, Tueri.
Thank you, Chair Moreno. And good morning, everyone. I'm very happy and pleased to be here with you today to give a brief overview of the vision that we put together and presented to on August 7th. The planning team, we all came together and presented to a joint meeting for the Transportation, Regional Planning, and Borders Committee. And then also on August 14th to the Board of Directors, a vision that really reimagines our region's future. It's a vision of a transportation network that reduces congestion, increases social equity, and meets our legislative mandates. And a lot of data, public outreach, and analysis went into developing this vision. And I won't have time to cover all of it today. If you were a part of those presentations, you know how long they were. But I do encourage you that if you weren't able to join us at those meetings, to check out our YouTube channel, or go onto our website to download the meeting agenda packet and get more information beyond what we can talk about here today. And staff, I believe there is a presentation that you're going to pull up for me.
Yeah, I think Kendall's pulling it up.
Okay, And so while Kendall's pulling that up, again, today I'm just going to give a brief reminder of the 5 big moves and the strategies, and then I'll turn it over to Richard and the team who'll talk about the comprehensive multimodal corridor plans and those 12 corridors that are part of the vision.
And since we have a few seconds before the presentation comes up, I want to encourage the board members to please give us your opinions, any discussion that you want to have regarding the 5 big moves. I welcome it after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So why don't we just go ahead and go to the next slide. Kendall or Arthur, I'll indicate when to transition slides for you. But again, the 5 big moves are concepts and they're key strategies that demonstrate the possibilities for a future transportation system that provides a better experience really for everyone, regardless of how you would choose to get around. And it consists of complete corridors, which is really the backbone to our multimodal system, transit leap, providing that leap in transit services and giving quality, true options to the automobile for people who choose to travel. And then mobility hubs, really those places and connection points and allowing people to transfer between transit leap and giving them options for flexible fleets, our first and last mile. And then our next operating system that really ties all of the moves and everything together through technology. So next slide. So I'm going to step through a couple of these illustrations just to talk about each of those key strategies as part of the 5 big moves. And so this first one here is the complete corridors concept. And this illustration demonstrates how a typical highway could be transformed into a complete corridor that creates a space for all modes and really leverages that technology to keep people and goods moving. We also, as you can see, and it's appropriate that Susan chimed in earlier in the public comments period, wireless inductive charging infrastructure could also be embedded into roadways and really facilitate the expansion of clean electric vehicles throughout our region. Next slide. So Transit Leap, this is the full range of Transit Leap services being integrated into our complete corridors with dedicated space on the highways, as well as looking for offering dedicated space and priority for transit on our local roads so that they can offer fast and reliable service, including separated high-speed commuter rail service on our heavily traveled corridors. Next slide. And so flexible fleets, similarly, a full range of flexible fleets can be accommodated with dedicated space that's safe for smaller micromobility, our carpool lanes or HOV that also make rideshare and microtransit more competitive when traveling on our heavily congested corridors as well. Next slide. And then the next operating system. So this is really using technology and making a system that uses data, technology to manage how the lanes could be used in real time, changing as demand changes and increases throughout the day. And at certain times of the day, we could dedicate those lanes to freight. As you can see, some of the trucks highlighted here, transit, facilitating again the movement of people and goods along these corridors, or also when there's an incident, we could manage those lanes and lanes could be restricted, or you could shift traffic for emergency vehicle access in order to access the incident quicker. And so managing a system that really reduces the stop and go conditions that we have all experienced if you've been on our corridors during those peak hours of congestion, but those conditions really contribute to those greater vehicle emissions. And so the next operating system helps to enable that technology on our corridors. Next slide. And then mobility hubs, and they can come in all shapes and sizes. This is an image of a very urban example, but at the core of all of our mobility hubs, regardless if it's in the more suburban or rural communities, or if it's within our urban cores, there's a range of travel choices. So, and making it just easier for people to get around. So from having transit stations to having some of those flexible fleets, mobility hubs really are within the communities, anchored by those transit leap services, offering amenities that make it easy and convenient for people to take transit and enjoyable for them. Next slide. So this is an image of a complete corridors at a local street level, what it potentially could look like. And this, again, technology could play a large role in how the complete corridors in our next operating system could function, allowing us to manage not only the lanes, but also to better facilitate the curbs and how we would do pickup and drop off for either our Uber and Lyft or flexible fleets or our urban deliveries. You can see here in the image where the curves are highlighted with purple or red and yellow, just to help facilitate how we would manage pickup and drop offs on the curbs, as well as when we're reimagining what complete corridors at the local street level would look like. We want to provide dedicated and safe space to accommodate for active transportation as well as other micromobility to ensure that we're providing a safe space for them to travel within our region. And so really, when you start to pull all of this together, the 5 big moves, and you can go ahead and click, Kendall, they are 5 moves that are interwoven strategies that when you take them all together, they really enhance one another and they provide a new way of addressing congestion and improving social equity throughout our region. This image shows the integration of all of the moves that we shared with the policy committees and the board last month in August. It's a vision with a fully connected managed lanes network. It looks at improving our rural corridors to ensure safe and equitable access and improving the emergency evacuation and preparedness of those regions and to really meet their daily needs. It's a transit system of commuter rail and light rail that you can see here in the, well, it's difficult to see with the, but it's a commuter rail system of transit and light rail and rapid services that provides compelling options for people to driving. You know, it's something that's safe, it's convenient, it's affordable, and it really connects people with where they need to go. And then we have, as you can see in the pink, a network of mobility hubs and a deployment of flexible fleets that provides access to those high-speed commuter rail stations and to transit, and really gives multiple travel options for people to make shorter trips within the region, giving them an option to not own a car. And again, considering our next operating system and how technology plays an important role and ensuring that we make the most out of all of our current investments throughout the region, as well as any of the future investments. So again, I can't go into all of the details. A lot of data and community input was given to us in developing this network that you see here, but I'd highly encourage you to take a look at our August 7th or the August 14th presentations that were given to our joint policy committees or the board, and we'd be happy to take any questions if there are any. And so
yes, Madam Chair, this is Craig Jones with the Alliance for Regional Solutions.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Did that complete your presentation?
Yes, that completes
okay. Yeah. Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so for the working group members, if you'd like to offer comments or questions, please either turn on your camera as Mr. Craig Jones did, or you could raise your hand at this time. And with that, Craig, we'll take you first.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate this. At the outreach team meetings, we've had a good discussion of this material as well. And particularly, I wanted to reference the Mobility Hub information and how it's presented in this material, starting on page 23 of the written report, which is attached to our agenda. It starts to go into mobility hubs. At the outreach team meeting, we had a good amount of discussion on differentiating what would be the mobility hub stations themselves within the boundaries of a mobility hub, and what we call the amoeba, kind of the pink outline area, which is shown for each mobility hub. So to differentiate between those two, the station of the mobility hub and that amoeba extent. And we had a good amount of discussion on that it shouldn't be misunderstood that the accessibility to any particular mobility hub station should not be understood to be limited to what is shown now as the pink amoeba boundaries. So any comment on that? And I know, Barry, you had some good discussion on this as well, if you wanna hone in.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say, yes, that we don't want the mobility hubs kind of emphasize where we see a concentration of the amenities and the services that are being highlighted as part of the mobility hubs strategy, but certainly that does not preclude outside of those amoeba pink geographic boundaries that you see on a map from some of those services going beyond there. So yes, we'd agree with your statement on that.
Do you want any other comment?
Yes.
Craig?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next up, I saw Randy. So I want to be respectful of how people asked to speak. So go ahead, Randy.
Oh, excuse me, Chair. Yeah, I don't think I raised my hand. I would like to make comment, but I'll go ahead and ask a question now. I may have another one later. But I thank you, Tiari, for the rollout of this vision, and it's such an exciting moment for our region. And congrats to the SANDAG team for this milestone, and appreciate the breakdown. I did have a question about the complete corridor definition. I know we've been talking about complete corridors for a while, and the reason why this is important to City Heights CDC is because we believe that the only complete corridor built in this region today is actually the SR-15 through City Heights, which is home to the state's first freeway cover park, transit lanes down the middle, adjacent bikeways, bike bridges, adjacent parks. Of the SR-15 Visions project, we believe kind of set the model for complete corridors, and the term complete, I believe, kind of draws from the complete streets movement, which is that the street is not complete until it serves everyone. And one of the things that I feel like is missing from the definition of complete corridors here on page PDF page 11 of the document for the attachment is that I see a mention of active transportation, but I would like to see, if possible, a mention of the importance of community cohesion when planning these freeways, because we know that freeways, a lot of in San Diego and across the country, were disproportionately had a disproportionate impact on a lot of Black and Brown communities, and were planned through Black and Brown communities, dissected, destabilized a lot of communities like in Barrio Logan, City Heights, the I-5 through Little Italy. And the importance of community cohesion is, I think, a recognition of that, and a commitment to maintaining community cohesion, whether it's walkways, bikeways, parks on top of the freeway, bridges. I think that's an important part of looking at undoing some of the harmful work that has, the harm that has been created from some of the highways, and then recognizing that more work needs to be done moving forward.
Thank you, Randy, for the comment. Yeah, we'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
And so just a reminder for working group members, if you'd like to offer a comment or you have questions, please either turn on camera or raise your hand. If your camera is on, that indicates to me that you'd like to speak. So with that, Mr. Brian Pollard.
Yes, I have a couple questions. The city of San Diego already has, I think, a complete streets planned for any new developments that are coming in. Is that correct? Do you know that it's passed through city council some time ago, and that is supposed to be the model with development services moving forward? Is that correct? Does anyone know?
I would have to look that up. I don't know if Chair Moreno is.
Does that sound familiar, Chairperson Moreno?
We can get back to you with an answer on that. And and actually that you bring up a good point that that's something that that we should discuss here with this body.
Because I'm looking at my neighborhood and we're getting development coming in with the affordable housing unit, and it seems like the sidewalks are still the same size. There's not a buffer zone created. And so if you can, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
The other thing I had was, and it's probably going to be an overall discussion, but it certainly touches all of the big 5 moves, is transportation agencies as well as city, county entities. We've identified, I guess, or are starting to identify equity-related issues. I would at some point love to have a conversation on how and what SANDAG has in mind to address any inequities in transportation, specifically in redlining areas. We've been discussing what the problem is now for quite a while, and I would just be interested to see what SANDAG's, and I'm going to do the same thing with the city and the county and whatnot, but what are the plans to make things more equitable? This is a good opportunity.
If I apologize, I'm going to interrupt here, but I think your comments are more for during public comment time. Right now, we are focused, or the topic at hand, or if you could address your comments more towards the 2021 regional plan, the 5 big moves.
And that's what I'm alluding to, is within these 5 big moves, what equity changes or what equity issues are going to be addressed in these big 5 moves. This is what I hear, and we're all on the same team, but this is what I hear. The big 5 moves already has equitable issues built in, so we really don't have to do a whole lot in that area. That's sort of what I'm hearing. Could be totally wrong, but that may be the perception of other people when this starts to get unfolded. So because of that, if we could, like, I just identify a couple. You know, we're talking about the hubs. One of the things that Craig was mentioning earlier was, I brought that up, that said, we've got a hub on the corner of Market and Euclid, pretty busy, always busy. And is that a hub location? Or is that going to be an amoeba kind of thing? I could tell you, if it's an amoeba sort of soft reach with access, that is not going to go well. We know that that's a very, very high trafficked area. So if that cannot be done, reasons why, or the elements you use to identify hubs in the city needs to be clearly articulated. Does that make sense?
To me, it makes absolute sense. I love what you were saying. You were asking a clear question, whether the location on Euclid is part of the amoeba or is it part of a hub. Tuari, can you answer that question?
Hi, apologies. Somehow my internet disconnected, even though I'm hardwired in. So I didn't hear the full question, but if a location for Mobility Hub is part of an amoeba, I would have to get back to you, but I would certainly encourage you that you can, the data viewer allows us to have more granular view of what is part of the amoeba mobility hubs versus if it sits outside of it. But again, I do want to emphasize that even if an area is outside of the amoeba, the pink boundary lines that appear on the map, that doesn't preclude a location from being able to implement or integrate into the community beyond those boundary lines. And some of them are proposed as part of a mobility hub.
And so if that is the case, if the latter is the case, then I would love to have some specific, a listing of the elements that were used to identify the actual hub locations. We did take a look at it through the data viewer, and I still wasn't really sure if it was colored, but then it just, and someone from staff did indicate last week that they were going to look into it. So it's already, I think, being done. Just want clarity with it and make sure that equity is not blended in to the process, but a separate sort of focus on the big 5 moves. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense, and it will be a
and
focus of the plan.
I'm looking at it from a perception of other people that know absolutely nothing about transportation when we're starting to sell it. And the first thing they're going to say is, hey, why don't we have one of those over here? And that's why I'm saying if the data suggests that it is not needed, it needs to be clearly articulated so we know we're all reading from the same sheet of music, right? Because the first thing they're going to say, you got them in La Jolla, you got them in Encinitas, you got them downtown. We know we have high ridership. So what's the deal? And perception is 99% of this.
No,
Okay.
and I appreciate your comment, and I'd love to have more people take us into their specific community to ask or to ask clarification questions and ask for other matters in their community. So I appreciate you, Mr. Pollard, bringing this up and taking us and specifying, you know, a particular region that you flagged, if you will, of your community. So I thank you for that. Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Pollard?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
And thank you. No, thank you.
Absolutely. And just so you know, I will have my staff follow up after the meeting with you on your question regarding the city of San Diego. I do not see anybody else with their hands raised or with their camera on. I don't know, oh, I see a hand, a little blue hand. And Lisa, Miss Lisa Cuestas, take it away.
Hi, thank you. I really appreciate Mr. Pollard's comments, and I think a lot of it is very relevant in San Isidro as well. And where I think my team and I also would like to hear more specificity around things like the mobility hubs, right? And with the 5 big moves, how do they connect with the existing deficiencies that exist in many communities of concern? Because it's also about how do you receive a new approach and a new plan with the existing conditions and challenges and lack of infrastructure. And so that's where for a San Isidro, it can be tricky to really, when we have pedestrian bridges, but they're not very efficient and friendly to pedestrians, when we have a huge network of alleyways that don't have the same infrastructure as streets because they are not streets, right? They're alleyways that function like streets. And in San Isidro, there's a huge network of that. It creates a challenge in even being able to receive a new approach. And so I would really recommend that. And I'm sure that that's the case in several communities of concern. And so I think it should be a piece that we can hone in on a little bit better, because exactly as Mr. Pollard was saying, you know, how are we going to do that here? Well, and then for us, San Isidro is when are we going to fix what's already not working well? And so I think that has to be part of the approach and conversation, and those deficiencies, where do they fall in with the 5 different big moves?
Wonderful, thank you. So we have heard from San Isidro, we have heard from Southeast. Any other area of the county that would like to comment on the regional plan? Okay, Randy, I see your hands up. Go for it.
Thank you, Chair. Would now be the appropriate time to ask about the alignments shown in the document for this item. I know that maybe that might warrant another follow-up meeting, but just wanted to plant the seed that we'd like to learn a little bit more about, I believe it's the purple line alignment. You could see that I know it was originally planned to go up the 15 freeway, and I could see here that it's planned to go up the 805 area corridor. Yeah, I want to just ask about that.
Yeah, the purple line, and I believe we have our transit leap experts, Brian and Jennifer. So rather than me step through, I could ask either Brian or Jennifer, if you're on the call, would you like to jump in and answer Randy's question on the purple line alignment changes?
Sure. Is there any way that we could bring up the slide that shows the alignment? If not, I can walk you through it, or we can have a separate conversation. But essentially what we've done is we've transitioned the purple line, or what we refer to as the purple line, from what was originally anticipated to be light rail technology to commuter rail technology. So what you'll see in the alignment is that because we're sharing, or we shifted to commuter rail, what we're looking at doing is sharing that infrastructure, that tunnel, because we envision that it'll all be grade separated, either above or below grade. So between the border and National City, we'll share it, and those essentially will provide the trunk line for the southern piece of the corridor. And from there, we split it, we branch the line, and we take a portion of it up the I-5 corridor into downtown. And then the other portion goes into University Heights, goes up to North Park, and then continues directly into Mission Valley and Kearny Mesa and Sorrento. So if you'll remember, the intent of the purple line was really to act as a jobs train. And so there is a station, and I think we'll have to bring you back an actual alignment, if you will, because it's hard to talk to this map per se. But we do think that we've provided for the intent of the purple line and adequate connections from City Heights, University City, North Park, and really that whole urban core area now has access to the purple line. Whereas before, when we took it up the I-15 corridor, it really had much more of a limited base of access. So I would be happy to come back and give more information about that. In fact, we're developing some additional graphics on the purple line that will help people visualize better where we develop the new alignment from, and then also what the catchment areas are.
That'd be really helpful. Just to clarify, because you did mention City Heights, is the purple line still planned to serve the City Heights community?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for allowing me to follow up, Chair.
Wonderful. Thank you, Randy. And also, just to answer your question, anything that has to do with the 2021 regional plan, the 5 big moves what do they say? What's the word? We can talk about it here. I want to hear your guys' opinion, perspective. SANDAG wants to hear what your community has to say about the 2021 regional plan. So absolutely, it's the right time to ask and comment. Thank you for that question, and thank you for the answer. And yes, we will bring it back. I don't see anybody else's hand raised, or anybody any cameras on. So I will now ask the clerk if we have any comments from the public.
I do not see any hands raised in the public.
Okay, so thank you very much for the presentation. We truly appreciate an opportunity to speak on this very important plan that is going to lay the foundation for the future of transportation for the County of San Diego. So we really appreciate your time. And so we're going to move on to the next item, which is the Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Program Overview. Richard Chavez is going to present an overview, and then we're going to have 2 examples of CMCPs from the North and South County presented by, in the North County Region Corridor SR 78, Kareem Scar, Caltrans District 11, and Brian Lane from SANDAG. And from the second part is the South Bay to Sereno, which is Jennifer Williamson from SANDAG. We would like then to let you get your input from a social equity perspective on your thoughts on mechanisms for engaging your respective communities in the planning effort. So while the presentation is going on, please think about those things. So take it away.
Thank you, Chair Moreno, and CBO members. Thank you for having me today. Happy to give you a presentation on what we call our comprehensive multimodal corridor plans. This is a big effort for us here at SANDAG. We've got a lot of people working on this, a lot of people working on the regional vision that Tori went over. So talk a little bit about how those two integrate as well. Next slide, please. So what is a comprehensive multimodal corridor plan? I'm just going to call them corridor plans from this point forward. It's an integrated process, multimodal process, transportation planning to try to achieve a balanced transportation system. It's a process that informs the decision makers by engaging the community and stakeholders like yourselves. We're very interested in your feedback on where we're at today, and I'm going to go over and get into some of the details of where we're at, as will Jennifer and Kareem. Bottom line, corridor plans try to develop consensus on what the priority transportation solutions are for each corridor, which makes us much more competitive when we're going after local, state, and federal funds. When we have consensus on what priority transportation solutions are, that's a very, very powerful place to be when we're competing for scarce transportation funding. Next slide. So typically, our historical process has been, we'll do 4 or 5 corridor plans. We'll take a couple years to do that. We'll spend a couple years updating the regional plan. Then the projects that rise to the top will start the environmental process, the CEQA NEPA environmental clearance process for those transportation solutions that rise to the top. We're at an interesting point in history right now where we're doing all 3 at the same time. We're doing corridor plans. We're updating the regional transportation plan, probably the biggest overhaul we've done of the regional plan in over 20 years. And we've got CEQA NEPA process going on for specific projects. So a lot of coordination, a lot of teams working hard to keep coordinating, keep informing each other on where each other's at on the status for their particular piece. Next slide, please. So back in September of 2019, the SANDAG Board of Directors authorized $40 million for 12 corridor plans throughout the region. The first half of that 5-year program, we're completing 5 of those 12 corridor plans. Those include South Bay to Sereno, which is shown in the purple area on the map. The Central Mobility Hub and Connections shown in yellow. The C to Santee corridor shown in green. The North County corridor shown in blue. And the San Vicente corridor shown in red. Next slide, please. So these are the phase 2 corridor plans. These would be completed in the second half of the 5-year program. Include the North County Coastal Corridor, the I-4 North Corridor, Interstate 8 Mission Valley, Interstate 15, State Route 56, State Route 94, State Route 125, high-speed transit envisioned on all these corridors, as well as a airport-to-airport connection linking Rodriguez Field and Tijuana with San Diego International Airport. Next slide, please. So this kind of gives you a general picture of how local, state, and federal policy feed into the CMCP, the corridor planning process. We've got policy objectives that come out of the federal government, state goals and objectives, the 5 big moves, which Tori covered earlier, as well as local city and county general plan land use decisions that feed into that corridor planning process. And what comes out of it is hopefully prioritize solutions for technology, highway, transit, local streets and roads, as well as active transportation. Next slide. Corey went over the complete corridors process. This is integral to the corridor planning process. How do we make the best of the corridors that we have, considering all of the multimodal aspects, all the multimodal tools that are available to us. Next slide. So a little bit about where we've been and where we're going. Last fall, the board allocated the $40 million for 12 corridor plans over 5 years. We're trying to complete 5 of those in the first 2 years. Moving into spring, we spent a lot of time forming the teams, multi-agency, multidisciplinary teams. We've been to the Transportation Committee at SANDAG talking about program goals and objectives. What's come out of that is 12 policy objectives that I'll get into a little bit. This summer, we're working hard on the preliminary analysis to better define the geographical areas, that exhibit that I showed you, getting down to the neighborhood by neighborhood details for the geographical area that will be covered in the analysis. We're going to continue discussing those policy objectives with the SANDAG Board and Transportation Committee, getting into the issues and opportunity statements for each corridor. Those appear on page 48, I believe it is, of the agenda package. We'd love to get your comments on those issues and opportunity statements, trying to get a brief statement together for each corridor on what the important issues and opportunities are for each corridor. This fall, we're going to start moving into community outreach, doing that virtually, getting with the SANDAG Transportation Committee for more of a deep dive on each of the corridors, discussing where we're at with the initial analysis, the community outreach strategies, identifying deficiencies in each of the corridors. Then as we get into spring of next year, working with the SANDAG Transportation Committee on the results of the community and stakeholder outreach, and really getting into the detailed analysis based on the feedback that we're hearing from stakeholders like yourselves in the communities. Then the summer of 21, having draft plans together, wrapping those up with final comprehensive multimodal corridor plans in the fall of 2021. Next slide. So these are the 12 policy considerations, and listening to the social equity discussion a little bit earlier, this is where the magic's going to happen, or hopefully happen, in regards to social equity. These are the 12 policy considerations that our board has discussed, Transportation Committee have discussed. It's kind of a combination of policy considerations that come out of California Transportation Commission, Federal Highway Administration, and the Federal Transit Administration. We boiled them into these 12 policy considerations. Sam, I recommend that we get Sam Sanford to a future CBO working group meeting, as Sam is leading the effort to develop the performance metrics that will revolve around these 12 policy considerations, getting into the metrics that will be used to evaluate transportation solutions for each corridor. Social equity feeds into a number of these policy considerations. So I'd recommend at a future meeting, as Sam gets into more details, more specifics on what the performance metrics are, again, revolving around these policy considerations. I think that'd be a worthwhile time for a future CEO working group meeting. Next slide. So this is my last slide, just kind of a general schedule on where we're heading. This last spring, we developed work plans for each of the corridors. We're getting into some of the data analysis this summer into the fall. Once we get the community outreach started, fall moving into spring, we'll get into really more of the detailed data analysis, getting into the heavy GIS and modeling work, then producing the draft and final plans heading into summer and fall of 2021. And that concludes my presentation. I don't know if you, Chair Moreno, want to stop for questions now or move into Kareem and Jennifer's presentation, but I think they're ready to go if you'd like them to move into their presentation.
Let's have them go into their presentation, and then at the end, we'll take comments and questions.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, I think we have a PowerPoint for you, so I'll wait for that to be brought up. But today, what I'm going to show you and talk a little bit about is 2 of our CMCP projects, the SR78 corridor, and then what we're calling the South Bay to Sorrento corridor. which is essentially a kind of a mega corridor, if you will, that operates all the way from the border of San Diego up to Sorrento Valley. So next slide, please. And here's an illustration of those corridors. And Kareem Scarlett from Caltrans, he is the PM for the SR 78 corridor. He's going to give you a lot more detail. They're just a tiny bit further along than the rest of the corridors. So he has a little bit more to tell you about today than I do. However, if you look at the purple area shown there, that is our South Bay to Sorrento corridor. And there we'll be studying all of the items that Richard identified previously, and we'll be looking at areas of influence that basically influence the transportation choices within those corridors within that purple area. What you see here in the yellow is our central mobility hub. The green is our San Vicente to the Sea corridor, or the 52 corridor. And then in the reddish orange you see here is our 67 corridors. And those are other CMCPs that I'm sure you'll be hearing about in the future. Next slide, please. So the CMCP process is a multi-agency process designed to develop an integrated set of multimodal improvements tailored to the needs of that specific corridor. It starts by understanding where people want to go. So we use data essentially to do that, very similar to what we did with the vision. And then we look at where are gaps and opportunities, where are our deficiencies within the corridor. We really want to analyze and look at this holistically from all the different modes to figure out what are we solving for essentially. Followed by this, we look at what potential solutions are, and we test and we phase the various solutions. And this is where the model comes in. And this is where we're going to look at how do each of those different types of modes influence the transportation options in the region or in our service area, if you will. Finally, we'll be doing an implementation footprint. And I think what Richard might have said, and what I want to reiterate is that the reason we're doing a lot of these CMCPs now is because there is a pot of SB1 money that's going to be available this year that requires a comprehensive CMCP to be completed. So by us completing these, we're going to have a list of projects that we can apply for funding for here. So that's really important. And you know, the one thing I want to say here is that historically improvements were made in a much more siloed type of planning effort. We would essentially look at the freeway or we would look at transit, but here we're going to take a holistic approach and try to create complete solutions for our corridor. And that's what makes these CMCPs different. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, is my next slide up? I'm sorry. So here you see 4 different visualizations of our corridor, my South Bay to Sorrento corridor, if you will. And this slide merely is being used to show you all of the data applications that we'll be using for the development of our transportation solutions. So this is some general demographic data that you'll see kind of overlaid on our corridor. This will help us define, you know, where different communities of concern are located, where different populations are located, and kind of what the topography is also in our area and how we need to work around some of those things. So I just wanted to give you a sense of what that data is. And if you've all gotten a presentation on the data reviewer, you can see how we use that for the vision, and we'll be using it here also for our CMCP work or a similar type of data reviewer. We are not very far along right now with our South Bay to Sorrento corridor. So what I'd like to do is to turn it over to Kareem, and he can share with you a little bit more about that SR 78 corridor. So Kareem, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
All right, thank you very much, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. So I guess we're going to go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so for the North County Corridor Study, I mean, we are still in the beginning stages of this study, but to date, we've been able to, define the study area, which essentially is, includes the city boundaries of Oceanside, Carlsbad, Vista, San Marcos, Escondido, and a portion of the county. Today, we have also basically established a technical working group, which is comprised of representatives from each one of the jurisdictions along the corridor, as well as NCTD. And within the study area, we are looking at not only SR 78, but 76, improvements to Sprinter, improvements to local arterials, specifically some of the bigger trunk lines like Palomar Airport Road, as well as others. And we've also been able to conduct an initial outreach to the local agencies as well to get a sense of the issues and the challenges that they were dealing with within the transportation network, and to document basically any ongoing or completed studies that they had. So utilizing this information as well as studies that Caltrans and SANDAG has also completed, plus the use of location-based data has helped us to identify some of the corridor characteristics, such as travel patterns inside the study area, as well as movement into it and out of it. Next slide, please. So over the past 25 years, this corridor has seen a tremendous amount of growth in its population, 42%, in its employment or jobs within it, 67%, as well as home construction, an increase of 28%. It's also anticipated that this area will continue to grow by another 20% in its residents and jobs. With this anticipated growth, it's really important that we develop a transportation system that is efficient and provides options for all of its users. Next slide. So as part of this study, we will be looking at the home to work commute trip. And this slide is showcasing the main job centers in the corridor. With the exception of Camp Pendleton, as you can see, the majority of these employment centers cluster along San Marcos and Palomar Airport Road. These job centers represent about 80% of the total jobs within the corridor, and approximately 60% of the employees at these job centers also live within the corridor. Next slide. So this exhibit showcases, some of the power of using location-based data to explore existing travel patterns. So what you're looking at are the different routes that people use to access this job center. When we did this, we were utilizing a street light. What we noticed was that there was a strong north-south travel pattern to this job center. Therefore utilizing the local arterials pretty much more than the freeway to access this job center. Also, the residential areas adjacent, just to the north and just to the south, were contributing a significant amount of the daily trips to this area. What else we also saw was a very strong OD pair, or origin and destination pair, between Oceanside and this job center, as well as Vista and this job center. So utilizing this type of information will help the team develop a more balanced set of transportation solutions. Next slide. So this slide is basically, can you click next, because this one's animated. Again. I think there's a couple more clicks. Thank you very much. All right, so essentially what this slide is just showcasing is the difference between the existing RTP vision versus the new Big Five moves vision for this corridor. So some of the notable differences, like as we've talked about today, is the mobility hubs through this area. I think there's about 5 or 6 of them within this area. The inclusion of a next-gen rapid service through this corridor is a new one. This also includes improvements to the Sprinter line, as well as local arterial improvements. Next slide. So, some of the issues that we've been able to identify, some of the high-level issues that we've been able to identify in this corridor, one of them is the connectivity issues. The existing network doesn't easily align with where the dispersed employment and housing centers are. Also, there are issues with the interactions between cars and bikes, the Sprinter and city streets, and then the freeway and city streets as well. Another issue that we also noticed too is the amount of time people were traveling. Utilizing the location-based data. Basically, if you take the average travel, if you take the average trip length across all modes for the corridor, it was about 9 miles was the average trip length. And then on the same token, the average travel time for the corridor across all modes was about 28 minutes. So that's a lot of time, spent traveling for, 9 miles, essentially. And then lastly, the corridor also needs to develop a competitive travel option opposed to SLV travel. Right now, there are other alternatives in the corridor, but between the headways and connection issues, utilizing those other forms of transportation, do not make them competitive to SOV. And with that, I believe that was my last slide. And so Jennifer, I'm gonna hand it back off to you.
Thanks, Kareem. So what you've just seen is the SR78 kind of in the identify process, as you see in this slide here in front of you. They're identifying the corridor characteristics and beginning to analyze some of those gaps and opportunities. And what we'd like to do today, and we're hoping that this will spur a discussion from the CBOs on where do you think you would have the greatest avenue for input in this process. The CMCP is a very, very stakeholder and public comment driven process. We really want to hear your input on all of these different stages, if you will. But where do you think you have the greatest opportunity to engage in these different areas? And so again, there's 4 different types of pieces that we'll be looking at as we step through the process. Next slide, please. So this slide here represents kind of our milestone inputs, and they are related to the holistic approach, if you will. As I said, we're developing our existing conditions. We're looking at the gaps and needs in the corridors. We want to identify what the goals and objectives are. And then finally, we're going to be looking at the data. It's all about the data and the public input in these plans. And from there, we'll be developing the evaluation framework. And we have every intent to come back to this committee during that stage and go out to your actual communities in some manner to get input on those performance measures and ensure that you have adequate discussion and understanding of the different projects. Finally, we're going to be developing the transportation solution strategies. And again, this is where we're going to look at it holistically. We don't want to develop just a freeway project. This is looking at a complete corridor or system of projects to develop. And during this portion, we're going to be fleshing out those projects that we think have the most opportunity to achieve some of the goals of the study area. And finally, there you have the draft CMCP. So I don't want to spend a lot more time talking because we really would like you to tell us how you would like to be involved in our CMCP process. And based on what you've seen today, is there anything that you see just off the top of your heads that you want to start engaging in immediately? So with that, I'm going to turn it back to either the chair or Richard. I'm not sure.
Well, I can take it over from here. No, and thank you so much for providing us such an early opportunity to voice our opinions. Mr. Chavez mentioned, you know, projects rising to the top, right? So this is and we know in government that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So I would like to turn it over to the board members to see comments and questions and clarification, anything that they would like to talk about the CMCPs. And also thank you to Jennifer, to Kareem, and to Richard. We truly appreciate this opportunity. So if CBO members would like to offer any comments or questions, once again, please either turn on your camera or raise your hand at this time. Oh, I see Craig. Craig Jones,
Yes.
Take it away.
As always, thank you so much. A couple of questions and at least one observation. First question, this development of CMCPs is mandated by law in order for our region to be competitive for funding. Is that correct?
To a certain extent, the SB1 funding, so state funds that we'll be competing for early in 2022. We will need to have quarter plans or CMCPs completed to compete for those funding. But as far as federal or other local funding, no, they're not required. And then the local funding, it would be if at some point SANDAG or MTS or, you know, together we go after a local sales tax measure, another sales tax measure, having quarter plans completed, having consensus within the communities and the leadership on what those transportation solutions are, that's very powerful to getting the votes, right? You need 2/3 votes to get local funding for sales tax to pass. Having quarter plans completed makes us more competitive, but not required.
Okay. I note that the timeline for developing the CMCPs is very closely paralleling the development of the next regional plan, the 5 big moves. So just to comment, it'll be critical to make sure that this shorter term plan or set of plans are completely consistent with and serve to implement what is being proposed as the 5 big moves. I observe that the CMCPs are shorter term, they're 5-year term plans. Once this set of plans are adopted, would the 5-year term expire before the next set are developed?
Kind of a continual process. You know, once we get a quarter plan completed, then that feeds into the regional plan typically, and then, you know, we're constantly updating quarter plans as things change, right? As demographics change, as land uses change, that's when quarter plans need to be updated. Typically, we're working on 4 or 5 quarter plans in every 2-year period. But this time in history is a little bit different because, you know, like I mentioned earlier, we've got a pretty big reset going on of our regional plan, our regional transportation vision. So we're playing catch up in a lot of areas right now.
Okay, I anticipate that we CBOs will be called upon to perform outreach and input into this. So just a note to staff to let us know about the scheduling of this as far in advance of as possible so we can be effective. We don't want to try to do things last minute. Just finally, a comment on my part. It's been stated over and over again in the political discussion about the next regional transportation plan that we need to keep the promises that were made in the past. I observe that this set of plans, the CMCPs, are keeping the promise of shorter term immediate investments into the 78 and 67 corridors. So let it not be said that this effort with the CMCPs as well as the 5 big moves is not keeping that promise. This is the investment of those dollars where it was promised to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Lisa Cuestas?
Hi, thank you again. I wanted to state that I really appreciate the approach with case studies. I think that's very appropriate in any planning. I think when we're talking about major corridors and major frequency in travel, I think for the border community and San Isidro and specifically the border, I think that really does need to be looked through that lens with a case study. And as you were pointing out, really being able to identify existing conditions and being able to move from existing conditions into layers of solutions. When we were talking, I heard, somebody say it was taking for 9 miles, something like almost half an hour. And so we can really relate to that. There's folks that spend anywhere from 2 to 7 hours traveling north to south, right? And so that has a huge impact on your everyday quality of life. And I think that has to be part of the conversation and how and where you begin providing different options and solutions for those folks who are traveling on such a regular basis. Thank you.
Wonderful. Next, we're going to go to Mr. Brian Pollard, and he's going to be followed by Kim Hanley and Lillian Serrano. Take it over, Mr. Brian Pollard.
Okay, Jennifer, to answer your question, where we can help in this process is in the initial design. Please don't do what has been done in a lot of other organizations, design it and then come and ask for input, right? One of the things I've noticed, and I could totally be wrong, these are just my observations, I'm trying to drill down and make sure that the elements that are used to come to priorities with all of these projects are consistent and recognizes equity issues that have been present for years and years. So, and again, if I'm wrong, I apologize. But as I sat and listened to Kareem and Richard's priorities and the elements and the factors that were used, they did not appear to be consistent. So there was a slide that Kareem put up about things that were considered in the 78 corridor, housing, demographics, those kind of things. They could be similar, but it seemed like there was a different list of factors, Richard, that you had mentioned. So I don't want to get into those necessarily because I had a bunch of questions for you, but I agree, Sam does need to come before us because it sounds like that's where this portion of setting priorities and projects are going to be critical moving forward. So he might be that starting point that gives you guys marching orders, right? As to how to come up with these priorities, because my questions were, how was phase 1 developed? What was the information that was used? Phase 2 as well. How are the policy objectives determined? And those are probably things that Sam can answer. So, but Jennifer, get us in on the design of it so we can try to help with you guys making the presentations equitably and easily accessible, right? And accepted by the communities, or some reason why it hasn't been. Something clear and focused. Hold on a second, guys. Okay, that's pretty much about it.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Kim?
Hi, yes, thank you so much. This is Kim Heinley with Bayside Community Center up in Linda Vista, and thank you very much for the presentation. This is very interesting. I'm curious, how do we get our community of concern, Linda Vista, to be a part of that? Because this happens often. The highlighted areas basically are on the perimeter of Linda Vista, but not necessarily anything covering that area, that neighborhood itself. And as a community of concern, I definitely want to see how we can make sure that we get our priorities involved and included in this too. And I think it's really important, especially for a neighborhood like Linda Vista, that that sits in between the Old Town Transit Center and all the development that's going to happen down there, potentially with the connections to the airport and the development of that as a hub through the 5 big moves, as well as the Tier 1 employment up in Kearney Mesa. So how do we get the multimodal aspects to go through Linda Vista as well? And I think there's major ties there with the 5 big moves and the look at microtransit and complete corridors and bike lanes, et cetera. So we're very interested in this and how we can get our community's input involved, because I think if a lot of this is data driven, we're probably missing a lot of data from neighborhoods like Linda Vista, and hence why we're not necessarily included in that. So I'd love to be a part of this and to elevate our residents' voices to get Linda Vista included in this part of the program. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to connect with you afterwards.
Thank you. Lillian Serrano.
Thank you. Yes, so first I just want to say I'm happy to see we did a focus on North County. Oftentimes we feel left out of a lot of the conversations in the region. And as also someone that is constantly or in a outside of this pandemic times, my daily commute does include using the 78 corridor. I think it's what the description of the challenges is pretty accurate. I just had a question in terms of how the data was compiled, and you might have covered it, and I didn't get it. So how was the process to identify the challenges? If you can go more in detail into that. And then also you mentioned that there's a working group that has representation from all jurisdictions. Who are the representatives from the jurisdictions? Is there something where we have our city council members participate? Is it like staff, city staff participate on it? And if this working group is having meetings with community members, or is this a open to the public type of meeting? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. For the technical working group, essentially it is city planners or city engineers from each one of the cities, or NCTD and the county. So we have not, I guess, put together a community group within the corridor right yet, but would be happy to sit down with you or anyone else, any of the other CBOs within the corridor, to kind of discuss what we're doing and get your input on it. As far as the challenges, those were also developed with some of the information, like I said, the location-based information, some of the studies that Caltrans has done, SANDAG has done, and the jurisdictions as well. And then we've actually ran those challenges by the cities themselves, and that's basically how, so far, we've put them together.
Yeah, thank you for the answers. I think just like the rest of my colleagues mentioned, it will be important to have community input from the beginning, and it seems that we are at that stage on the North County corridor. So I think it would be good to have a couple of meetings at least with some community organizations and or community members that will come are able to vocalize their concerns, just to make sure that everyone's voices are included.
Absolutely agree.
Wonderful, thank you. Next up, we have Randy.
Thanks, Chair. I have a comment, but first I wanted to ask a question, if I could. That I think that'll inform my comment to staff. Thanks for bringing this forward. What's the end goal of the comprehensive multimodal corridor plans? Is it to have a preferred alternative? Is it to have like several concepts on the table? Is it to have like a list of recommendations to improve all kinds of different mobility, reduce congestion? I see that you want to get it ready for gas tax funding, but can you tell us a little bit so we can understand what are you trying to achieve? What does it look like when the comprehensive multimodal corridor plan is complete?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Great question. So an important kind of basis for the corridor plans is the modeling, the modeling analysis that will be done. And we'll be looking at 2 years, two future years for modeling results in the plans, 2035 and 2050, which also align with the regional transportation plan, the regional vision that Tori covered earlier. And bottom line, we're looking at, okay, what transportation solutions provide the best mobility improvements, considering all of the 12 policy considerations in those corridors implemented by 2035 and by 2050. So that'll be the basis for what those prioritized transportation solutions are within each of the corridor study areas. Great question.
And if I could add something too, we also see the CMCP as a bridging study to the regional vision, because what we'll be identifying with the CMCP are near-term projects, mid-term projects, and long-term projects. And you're well aware that a lot of the projects in the regional vision are longer term. So we want to use the CMCP to help flesh out stepping stones to get to that ultimate vision, if you will. And for example, in the Purple Line corridor, South Bay to Sorrento, the regional vision takes a very high level approach and a look to alignments, for instance. We'll be using our CMCP and the data to really drill down and ensure that those projects are where they need to be, if there needs to be additional revisions to those lines. So it really is kind of that bridge between today and the regional vision.
Excellent. And then just as a follow-up comment, one area that I do feel I've seen, at least through my experience working on the 94 campaign, we're actually, working to create a multimodal corridor plan there. Barry was a part of that effort as well. I think one of the biggest decision-making points didn't have the community input, and that was when they actually generated 22 different alternatives for the 94, and staff made the decision to narrow it down to 5. And then for some reason, 5 went down to 3. And that whole process from the 22 idea generation to the 5 to the 3, there wasn't any community involvement in that process. So I want to build on Barry's comment about, and I think Lillian's as well, about bringing residents, community members in early, but also like tracking where are those major decision-making points where you go from the 22 ideas to the 5 to the 2, is make sure that community members are involved in that process as well, especially those in communities that have been historically excluded from those processes.
Thank you. And we also have comments from Erica Leary. She had some technical difficulties, so we are going to see if we can unmute her. And while we're doing that, I want to point out that there are comments being posted on the chat. So for those of you watching, make sure you go over to the chat. I welcome people to go to raise their hand so we could have this on video. So are we able to unmute Erica Leary? Okay, it doesn't sound like we are, so I'm gonna go ahead. Let's see, let's try one more time. Erica?
Erica, you were just unmuted. Go ahead and unmute yourself again. She is unmuted, Chair.
Okay, we can't hear you, Erica, so for the sake of time,
All right.
oh, go ahead.
How about now?
We can hear you. Go for it.
Sorry about that. I had two mute buttons on my phone. I forgot to do both. I just wanted to get in the record my question in the chat of just since I live up here in North County, it's always very interesting to see the analysis and the traffic patterns since I go back and forth between just in Oceanside and around the area daily. What the process is in looking at those with a social equity lens, and if like you look at job centers and transit patterns from those qualified as low income versus high income, and if those are you find the same travel patterns or if they're different, I think that would be important to be able to show our community how those analyses are done and if there's differences. And also just curious if education centers play a role in developing these plans as well. Up here in North County, we're very fortunate to have Miracosta, Palomar, and Cal State San Marcos, and just understanding if those education centers are equally accessible to our community.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe I'll start off and then turn it over to Kareem. Arthur, could you go back to slide number 5, I think it is, from my presentation, the 12 policy considerations slide? You know, and there, in those 12 policy considerations, we have a number of the topics that you discussed. You know, give Arthur just a minute here to pull up the slide deck. I'm sorry, Arthur, it's slide number 9 in the slide deck. So as far as the focus on the educational institutions, policy consideration number 12 is improving the jobs housing balance. That would include connections to and from educational centers. The social equity component feeds into a number of these policy considerations, starting with number 6, focus on low income and disadvantaged communities. Number 7, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which also is related to number 8, improving air quality and public health with a focus on disadvantaged communities compared to non-disadvantaged communities. Access to active transportation and micromobility, as well as access to transit, are another good measure of a social equity analysis. And again, Sam can get into more of the details, but you know, we look at things like proximity to high frequency transit, proximity to job centers. You know, can you get to and from job centers from your community within 30 minutes or less? Those are all the types of things that will be considered and looked at in the analysis. Number 11, affordable housing, where does it exist? Does it line up with communities of concern? You know, these will be some of the things that we get into with the future analysis. Again, we're just starting this process. You know, Sam's working hard with his team, which is a multidisciplinary, multi-agency team to look at what performance metrics feed into these 12 policy considerations which will be a big part of the decision-making process as we move through this process with stakeholders like yourselves, as well as the policy folks at SANDAG with our transportation committee and the board. Of course, each and every city council typically weighs in at this level, as well as Caltrans, and ultimately, especially when it comes to approval of the regional plan, the federal government, namely through Federal Highway, Federal Transit Administration. But Kareem, you want to get into some of the details of where you're at with the North County analysis?
Yeah, just a little. As it pertains to the educational institutions in the corridor, yes, we've done some travel pattern analysis around Cal State San Marcos as well as Palomar. We've done some analysis at Camp Pendleton as well. We do plan on running analysis around Miracosta, as well as some of the low-income communities within the corridor as well. But we haven't run those analysis yet, but we plan on to.
And then in terms of job centers, is there differences, or job centers accommodate all different income levels, and so there's big employment centers at various levels? Like, do job centers differ based if they're minimum wage jobs versus high income tech jobs?
Oh, right now we don't. Well, I don't know. I don't know, Richard. Does SANDAG have a map of the different types of job centers within the corridor? I don't know if we have that granular type of information, do we?
The information that we have, that I know we have, is employment density, which helps us to identify where our major employment centers throughout the region. We've done quite a bit of analysis on that. But as far as the granularity, as far as are they low-paying jobs, high-paying jobs? I don't know what level of granularity we have on that. But we can definitely bring that back at a future meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else's hand raised, and I don't see a panelist, so I'm going to take the opportunity to ask a few questions. Can you speak, you had mentioned the SB1 funds being available, and we know that when money is available, especially during these times, it's very important for us to quickly move. Can you speak to the SB1 funds and also how they relate to the CMCP program?
Sure. We've been through 2 cycles with the SB1 funding, and we did very well in cycle 1, and cycle 2 is out right now, so we're waiting to hear how we did on cycle 2. Cycle 3 will be beginning of.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when you say cycle 1, what did you apply for? When you say cycle 2, what are we waiting for? What did you apply for?
I'm not familiar with the details on, I think cycle 1 was mostly I-5 North Coast, so completion of the HOV lanes north up to Carlsbad and Oceanside. Cycle 2, I believe, is heavily focused on the coastal rail corridor, so shoring up the Del Mar Bluffs and completing some of the double tracking projects on that corridor. So cycle 3 is going to be more focused on what comes out of the CMCP priorities, and that would be spring of 2022. So we've got some time to get ready for that. And
sorry, you broke up. Spring 2022, you said, or 2020?
Spring of 2022, correct.
Okay, so what we come up with as a priority for the CMCP, hopefully you guys are going to take our input. That's what we're going to be applying for for spring 2022.
Correct.
Got you. You guys all heard that, right? So this is our opportunity to make comments, to let everybody know from SANDAG what it is we want our region to be focused on. And just to conclude, there are I don't have my notes in front of me. So there are 5 CMCPs, you said? 5. 2
Correct.
of them
Yes.
went up the list. 2 of them went up the list as priority. And so we still have another 3 that we want to take care of. So, okay. So thank you for that. And you know, we always have to follow the money. That's my motto. Do we have any comments from the public, clerk? I only saw Erica Leary's, but maybe there's something I've missed. I haven't seen anything.
No, I haven't. I'm monitoring and I haven't seen any hands raised.
Jen, can you hear me? Brian, Mr. Pollard had a question in the chat. He wanted, and maybe Richard can speak to it, about if the policy considerations were prioritized and weighted.
The ones that were listed, that you just listed as the elements that are used. So the question I asked was, are they prioritized as listed?
Great question, and thank you for that. No, they are not prioritized. I didn't mention that, but I always try to emphasize that. They are not listed in priority order, okay, and we are not proposing to attempt to prioritize them. And apologize, I live next to a park and they're cutting the grass right now, of course. But again, they are not in priority order and we do not intend to prioritize them. You know, it's just very difficult to say that, you know, social equity is above public safety or greenhouse gas emission reduction is more important than a supply of affordable housing. So we're not recommending as staff that we go through the brain damage of trying to prioritize those. What we are recommending is we have a robust set of performance metrics that feed into these 12 policy considerations. And then the results of the analysis, the data analysis, the geographic, spatial analysis, talking with the stakeholders, talking with the community, that we use that process to develop the prioritized list of transportation solutions.
And thank you for that. My offer is to reconsider, because what I would love to see is the brain damage being done by asking those tough questions. I think that is the entry point, in my opinion, for the community, because if we come out with a good, equitable yardstick, a ruler, then every decision we make could be made on those policy ones in that order. I mean, and I'm even thinking about weighting them. When we're talking about equity and addressing issues in underserved communities, we have got to do something differently. And I appreciate everything that you guys are doing, but I would love that conversation to be had, to weigh the pros and cons of digging deeply and getting our hands dirty, because we haven't yet, in my opinion. So, but I love that we're having this conversation. I got to tell you, I just am thrilled to death, because this is our chance to flush out these things that are uncomfortable and embarrassing, and I don't want to do this, and oh my God, do you know what that's going to cost us? And we need to have those conversations, I think. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that. And I just got a clarifying message that there are 12 CMCPs in all, with 5 being prioritized right now. So we are in what we call phase 1, which are the 5. And just so the board knows, you know, I'm taking this opportunity to educate myself as much as you are on our transportation, how our transportation system works in regards to SANDAG, how we prioritize, how we don't prioritize. Please, I welcome you to make comments on these topics, because they're very important, and we want to hear about Linda Vista, and we want to hear about East County and how what we are proposing is being impacted. We have 10 more minutes left, and we do not have any public comments. We are going to move on to the next item, and I want to thank Jennifer and Richard We appreciate you guys engaging a very important conversation with our board members and with the public. And so the next item is, so we thank you. The next item is possible topics for next meeting. I have been hearing you guys loud and clear. Future discussions that you proposed during this meeting. 1 is the purple line. 2 is Mr. Sam Samford and the 12 policy considerations, including the performance metrics, and a continued discussion on CMCPs. If there are any other topics that I might have missed that we would like to hear, please, right now is the time to turn on your camera and or to raise your hand. I don't see anybody on the light, so I also welcome you to reach out to me. For the public, my email is vivianmoreno@sandiego.gov. So if you're too shy to let us know today, always feel free to email us any future discussions that you want to have. Clerk, do we have any public comment on possible topics for the next meeting?
I do not see any hands raised, no.
Okay, so the next item is our upcoming meeting. And as staff is working on a big meeting for October, we may not have a separate meeting, but for now it is scheduled for October 1st, 2020 at 10:30. We will keep you informed. And if I could just take 1 minute of your guys' time, I do want to put a plug in for a policy that I have been working at City Hall. And it's an updated policy for unimproved streets that include alleys. This policy is from 1952. So we are trying to make sure that the city takes care of dirt roads that the city calls unimproved streets and alleys. And we had an initial conversation on Active Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Welcome you guys. I heard a few say, make comments about alleys. So I welcome you guys to engage in that process. So with that, thank you guys. Thank you everybody for engaging in this meeting. I look forward to having more discussions, more robust discussions. And thank you for making the time today. And we stand officially adjourned. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you. Happy weekend, everyone.